computer.
Got it.
So let me move the screen onto this view for a sec. Good evening, everyone. Lads, anybody that's there, just before we go, a little bit of housekeeping, put the mute on so we can have one voice at a time. And hopefully what we'll do is that myself and Michael have decided to keep it simple. We're two simple kind of fellas, so we're going to keep the conversation simple and uncomplicated and see where it goes. Now, I've known Michael, I know Michael a nice few years now on and off, and I've had a couple of conversations with Michael, but I am a huge fan of this man's work. You know, I follow him. I let him introduce himself to you, let him give rather nice scrolling down through the bio. But one of the things that I love, you know, when I read Michael's stuff is how insightful he is to how he sees the Sid Banks work, how pragmatic it is, how down to earth it is, how connected to every day it is. And it's something that I endeavor to model from it is the fact that there is a normality to the principles that's lived through it. To me, it's the spiritual come every day. And to me, Michael is a fantastic exponent of that. His wisdom, his knowledge, his kindness, and obviously his generosity to show up of an evening to us, middle of the day in California, to share his wisdom with us. I suppose to cut a long story short, Michael will tell you the story before he came about in 2015, but since then he has delved deep into it. He's also very much into the law of attraction, and he's also taken the coaching in another direction by fully immersing himself in the pure coaching through the ICF and through solution focused brief coaching. And he's managed beautifully to combine both, to see the wisdom in both and have both work together so wonderfully. And he's at the professional coach level with the ICF, but I suppose essentially considering the man's knowledge and wisdom and ability, you know, one could bestow the word master upon him. I know Dominic, because Dominic is not here, I'm going to nudge that one into the conversation. I'm hoping to get Dominic here another evening to talk to us. But without further ado, Michael, thank you so much for joining us. I greatly appreciate you jumping on and introduce yourself, tell the world. I've given you a quick snapshot and we'll go from there.
Wow. Yeah, thanks, Billy. That was pretty comprehensive and very generous, so I appreciate that. I mean, Billy's kind of covered it all. And I'll sort of rehash a bit of it. I came to the principles in 2015, and I can tell the story about how I came because that might be interesting. But I came to the principles in 2015, and at the time I was a gym owner, and I'd been working with professionally as a coach and trainer in the fitness and health industry for almost 10 years at that point. Before that, I had a martial arts studio where I did much of the same coaching and training work. And what happened, maybe I'll jump in straight into, my experience of coming to the 3P or to Sid's teaching. 2015 found me at my lowest point in my life, bar none. I don't necessarily believe that we have to hit rock bottom, as some people say, before we have an insight or an epiphany or an awakening experience. I think those are available and possible to anyone at any time. In fact, one of the things that I've come to see about that is the greatest equalizer of all people, in my opinion, is the fact that we can wake up to more of whatever we are at any time. So I've found that to be an incredibly valuable and pragmatic way of viewing the world. It's been the greatest equalizer across demographics, across race, across economics. Everyone has the possibility to wake up to something more. I find that remarkable. So my story starts, unfortunately, fortunately, I don't know, with a very, very dark period in my life. So 2015, the relationship I was in was collapsing around me. My business was beginning to implode around me. And I mean, I've shared this before. I was doing a lot of drugs at the time. So I was quite committed to my career as an addict at that point. Little side note, reflecting on that time, I find it incredible how whatever it is that guides us, whatever it is that's accessible to us, makes itself available so that we can still run a business, so that we can still raise children. I was a single dad at the time. So on one hand, everything was falling apart. On the other hand, there was still something that was supporting me. And I found in that acknowledgement that there was still something there, a great freedom and sense of liberation. There's always something there that's supporting us, even through our darkest times, even when we can't see that there's something there for us. I digress a little bit. So 2015, I got an email message from a colleague of mine, a young man that I used to have in my gym. I've known him from my neighborhood in Toronto, or near Toronto, where I grew up. I trained him at the gym for free for years. And then he moved away to British Columbia. And one day, his name is Silas Dubalar. And one day I got this message, September 18, I think is the day I got this message in 2015. And it says, here's a couple of audios. I think you might like them. We can use them as payment for all those years you trained me for free at the gym. And I'm going to send you a couple of books. So he sent me Jack Pransky's Somebody Should Have Told Us. He sent me George Pransky's The Relationship Handbook, and Michael Neal's first book. For some reason, the name escapes me. Help me out. He was just on there with you guys recently. What's his first one?
Is it the Inside Out Revolution?
Yes, The Inside Out Revolution. Thank you so much. So those books showed up a few days later. That night, 2015, I'm listening to the audio that Silas had sent me as payment for the years I trained him at the gym. 5 minutes in, my world exploded. To say that it changed is not to do it justice. I mean, since then, of course, the adage of, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water; after enlightenment, chop wood, carry water holds really true. And I'm not claiming any kind of enlightenment, not that arrogant, an awakening for sure. I've never experienced anything like this. The power that I felt, was exposed to, came through me, was life-changing. Within the first 5 minutes of Sid's Long Beach lectures, I'm not sure if you've heard those or not, my mind blew apart. And I knew in that split second that I had, what I heard, how frankly can I speak here? Am I good? All right. I knew in a split second, holy fuck, I've been making it all up. And that changed everything. I woke up like addiction gone. I still drink a little bit, but addiction gone. What changed in that moment, among all of the other things, was I regained my choice. I regained my free will that I hadn't had in decades and decades and decades, as long as I can remember almost. And I could talk to you about my upbringing, but it's not part and parcel to the conversation. But what's really funny is that I've gone back over the first 5 minutes of the Long Beach lectures. There's nothing there. Like again and again, it's like, I don't know, he's barely introducing himself. It's like there's nothing there. And in that moment, there was so much there that it changed my life. I'm quite convinced that had someone been watching it from the outside, they would have witnessed a psychotic break from reality. Tears streaming, uh, laughter, like it was nuts. And strangely, that evening, I was sober. I was in bed listening, and everything, the world changed. So that's kind of how I came to it, and the power of that transformation. And I'll say a few more words. What happened after that, and I'll share this because I think a lot of people, I don't know where everyone is in their experience, but I think a lot of people who have an awakening experience of some kind then get caught up in the idea, or not caught up in, but resort to trying to make sense of it or trying to understand it further. So you have this experience and you want to keep it. You want more of it. Mine lasted for about 8 months, and then I fell off a cliff and it was horrible. When all of a
Yeah.
sudden I crashed back to where I wrote something about it. But the 8 months of like, oh, I'm up here and the world is awesome. I was wearing rose-colored glasses. They never came off. And then not only did they come off, but I stepped on them and kicked them down the street and ran over them in my car. All of a sudden, reality was back, and that was interesting. But that's again a different story. What happened afterwards was I really threw myself into the pursuit of deepening my understanding of the 3P of Sid's teaching. So I've done work, programs, I should say, work. I've been mentored by some programs with others, with Michael Neal, with Bill Pettit, with Jack Pransky, with Amy Johnson. I mean, with a who's who of the, first generation teachers, we'll call them. And what I found in my effort to make sense of the experience, in my effort to go deeper into the experience, in my effort to understand it more, I actually lost it.
Yep.
Right? So what Billy said at the beginning about the simplicity of this, for me, it was the pursuit of it that kept me away from the simple, everyday aspects of this new understanding that I had discovered. So if anyone is new to the principles, I strongly recommend to try to resist the urge to analyze and absorb yourself in an intellectual understanding of it. Not that there's anything wrong with that, right? An intellectual understanding of how thought is used as a creative tool in our world is a good thing to have, no doubt about it. But it's not the be all and the end all. So somewhere we need a synergy between the practical application of what the 3P has on offer and an embodiment of it. So does that make sense? Like there's a balance to be struck there. I think throwing yourself totally into the spiritual realm of it is a disservice to the human aspect of it. I
Very much
think
so.
throwing yourself totally into the intellectual human pursuit of it is a disservice to the spiritual aspect of it. And one of the things that really strikes me about Sid's work, and I've been trying to find this line for years, so I'm paraphrasing now, but when you get this, you get to play on earth with the power of God. We as humans get to play with the power of God. So for me, bringing the two together, creating a harmony and a synergy between the spiritual aspect of who and what we are and the human part of who and what we are is, I think, what Sid was really pointing at. I mean, he was pointing at beyond that. I do understand that. But in a day-to-day practice, one thing he said was, I'm not saying the chair isn't there. It's there, but it comes to us via thought. And that to me speaks very highly and very prominently to an ability for humans to sort of coalesce ourselves into more. Does that make sense? God, I just feel like I just talked for 25 minutes or something.
No, it's quite mesmerizing.
Jump in, Billy.
I had a chuckle because the same happened to me with clarity.
Yeah,
After having I had that come to Jesus moment with my nephew,
right.
and just his head opened in front of me, and literally the following morning I was on the phone to Jamie Smart and off to London without no idea how I was paying for it, but I was hell for leather in it. So mine lasted a bit longer than yours. I got about a year out of it.
Oh, nice. Good for
And
you.
I remember I arrived at Christmas and things were really getting very shaky. Christmas 12, 13 months later. And after Christmas, I just kind of went, oh, this whole thing is bullshit. And I remember getting on, I had a right rant, and I reached out to Jamie Smart, and I was done with my marriage. I was done with my business. I was done with all of this shit. I was selling everything off. I was taking a few quid, giving to my wife the rest of the money, buying a bag and heading for India. I was leaving the world. This whole thing was a complete disappointment, And it did take me a number of months, and it was a very valuable lesson to learn. When I saw it, what I realized, and it's how you so beautifully paraphrase it, Michael. It was like I realized I was trying to hold on to that feeling,
Yeah.
and the harder I was trying, the worse it got.
Yeah, yeah. It's sorry to jump in on you here, Billy, but it's what that spurs is this, like when we're trying to hold on to a feeling, we're denying the possibility of more feeling coming or more emotion coming. So when we try to hold it, well, we're now closed because we're busy holding. There's no access anymore when we're holding on to one thing. We're no longer in the now. We're in what was, we're in the past. So what's trying to inform us no longer can, right? In the sort of the 3P language, we close ourselves off from wisdom.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
all, and I think it's important, Billy, to mention that that's innocent. It's innocent. It's innocent. It's innocent.
Well,
You know?
I think it's very much part of the learning of it. I think it's very much part of, and anybody that arrives to it shouldn't be disheartened, because it, to me, and I see it over and over, it's like almost like a valuable part of the journey.
Agreed.
It's a valuable part of it. It's a valuable learning process to recognize that what Sid to me points to is this continuous unfolding.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
a static unfolding, it's a continuous unfolding.
Yeah.
And when we
Well
try to
said.
hold on to a feeling, it remains, what I refer to as narrowing the aperture.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It narrows the aperture of everything that's possible,
Yeah.
and it allowed me to widen that. And like, since I have really started re-engaging in all of this and re-engaging in my coaching and everything, it's been very clear to me with the last 12 months that early on in my journey, I was always, some of the people that I've spoken to here that have heard me saying this, that it's very easy to look at the high points, looking at the big moments, the big flashy moments of enlightenment or awakening or whatever.
Yeah.
But 95% of our life is lived in the ordinary. It's
Yeah. And
day to
yeah.
day, it's lived in our work, it's lived in our relationships, it's lived in, and that's where the juice is.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. 95% of our time is spent in the ordinary, and Sid was a big proponent of being ordinary. I mean, for God's sakes, he told people to leave the island, like people found something with him, and then they did ordinary things like start businesses. They did ordinary things like getting married. They did ordinary things like so there is an ordinariness to
Right?
this thing,
Yeah.
that we all um, in some way, shape, or form, I think are looking for. Right. And for me, the thing that I'm still always looking for is joy and happiness, more joy and happiness, more possibility in our life. And what's happened, just to speak to the ordinariness, what's happened for me as I have more and more sort of let go of the pursuit of the understanding is that whatever it is that I experienced presents itself more and more in the day-to-day ordinariness of my life. So in the everyday bullshit kind of stuff that we all have, there's more joy in it. There's more happiness in it. There's less desire to change it. There's less desire to make more of it. There's just a greater, like a heightened appreciation of the fact of experience. you know I don't know if that'll resonate or not. I mean, that's a little bit new in how that's coming out. um but the being ordinary is such a challenge at times. At first you have that awakening, and all of a sudden you start to notice that, well, I see the world differently than other people do, and it's easy to kind of create distance between yourself and other people once you start seeing the world differently than they do. And the beautiful thing now is, man, people can see each other or see the world however they want. That freedom, that free will, it's so joyful now. Anyway, I digress a little bit there.
No,
Uh,
that's really beautiful. Speaking of practical terms of this, Michael,
yes.
and you spoke about, like, there is great parallels in our story about substance abuse and all of these types of things that happened in our lives. But how did the after change? We'll say, it kind of, the following morning, you got to put on your pants and went out the door, and what began to change?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, it would be cliche to say everything. So, that line of everything changed, nothing was different. Well, that's kind of what it was. What changed though, for me, well, the direction of my life changed. I knew in that instant that I was done in the fitness world. I mean, I'd been there, I'd been successful. I mean, I owned my own gym. It had had three different iterations. By all measures, I was doing great. But what changed was that, so there's a few things that practically changed, I suppose. Chief among them was I became aware of the role that I was playing in the life that I was living for the first time in a very clean and true sense. Oh wow. When I said, oh fuck, I'm making it up, I meant it. That was what I realized. Oh shit. Yeah, life might punch me in the face, but what I make of that punch in the face, I'm doing it. You
Oh,
know? So
yeah.
so one of the most significant changes was a sense of liberation or freedom from the conditioned thinking of my past. Not clean slate. I mean, heck, I still get caught in it. And as everyone forever will, including Sid and the Dalai Lama and Eckhart Tolle and everyone else. But there was a freedom in knowing that I had a part to play in my experience. That might have been the single biggest factor. That changed on a practical level. So no longer was I listening to the voice of my father in my head. No longer was I looking at my education or lack thereof and judging myself against other people. I'm saying in a general sense, it still happens from time to time. So that was something very significant. And the way to capture it, I think, would be to say that the experience that I had listening to Sid gave me back my freedom of choice. So before then, I had felt like I was kind of running autonomously. No, that's not the right word. Running robotically, no choice. Things were happening to me, not of me, right?
Yeah.
So the biggest takeaway was that, oh, I'm no longer a victim of life. I'm a creator of my experience in life. And that's probably the most significant experience or significant change that occurred for me. And that that awareness of not being a victim removed excuses. I don't know if we have time. I can tell a quick story of a conversation I had with Jack Pransky, who was instrumental in helping me make sense of this experience. Jack is the man. He's awesome.
Yeah, he's coming to Ireland in a couple of weeks. There's many of us going to see.
Oh, nice. Yeah, you got me sandwiched in between Michael Neal. That's a tough act to follow, and Jack, like cheapers. Some schlep here, man.
Yeah, you do beautifully. Yeah. We've no expectations.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Neither do I. But I was speaking to Jack, and I was describing the aftermath of my experience. And one of the things was reconciling my relationship with my father. We did not have a good relationship. I would go on to say he was an asshole. We didn't get along. And I was talking to Jack, and I said, one of the things that has happened is that I have not apologized to I can't find this really simple word. I've broken free of the impact that my father had on me, right? So I forgave him. Okay, that's a big deal for me. I forgave my dad for the way he did. So again, that back to that victim idea, right? So I forgave him, and I said, but I'm holding on to 10% still. And I'm holding on to that 10% so that I can pull it out when things don't work the way I want them to, and I can still blame him.
A weaponized
Jack, so Jack laughed at me. First he laughed at me because that's kind of what Jack does with me. He just laughs at me, and then oh, okay, I get it. But and Declan, if you know, I mean, Jack, you can vouch for that. Um, so anyway, and I said, I've forgiven him, but I'm holding on to this 10% so that when shit goes bad, I can pull it out of my pocket and say, see, it's not my fault. There's this 10%. And Jack said to me, he was innocent, right?
Yeah.
And then Jack said, and so were you. And that was a game changer. That was sort of the last, That was the last block being removed. That, oh, not only was he innocent, always doing the best he can from his level of consciousness, but I was innocent as well, always doing the best that I could from my level of
Oh, I
consciousness.
hear that.
The ripple effect of that, I mean, I can't, like, words can't do it justice, but suffice to say, I'm trying to stay in the theme of how it was practical. Seeing the innocence of others, even when their behavior is not behavior that I like or condone, whatever that means, is fine. It doesn't make one or the other better or worse than one or the other. It just means that we all are constantly moving up and down on this elevator of our awareness of the greater consciousness that we're connected to. There's no right or wrong in that. So seeing that has changed the way I relate to people. It certainly changed how I relate to my children, and we have good relationships. One of my wishes. So my daughter in 2015 had already moved out to university, so she was already out of the house. One of my greatest regrets, if you want to call it that, is that I didn't have more time with her after this experience, whereas my son did. And there's no story really behind that. It's just this little thing that's like, oh, I really wish that my daughter would have seen more of what's possible. So in a way, I wish I could have been there for her to lead by this new example of how I saw the world and my interaction in it. I think that would have been just a blessing. Now we've done a good job of making up for lost time there, but
Yeah.
yeah, this innocence piece, this innocence of both parties. So the one who you have a perception of having wronged you, they're innocent. You yourself and your perception of that wronging, there's so much innocence in there, so much, dare I say it, ordinariness
Yeah.
in that is just,
Beautiful.
yeah, it's remarkably calming, it's remarkably soothing, it's and and powerful. There is a power in, at least for me, so I'll articulate it again from how I see it. There is such an incredible power in throwing off my victimhood. The world is not imposing itself on me. I'm creating the world as I see it, moment by moment to moment by moment, as my elevator of consciousness moves up and down, as my
Yes.
attention to certain thinking meanders as it does. That's how my life and my experience are created. And that to me was just so liberating to throw off. I mean, uh, it was 30 plus years of seeing the world a certain way, as being powerless within the world, as being a victim of the world, using alcohol and drugs to escape this world that was imposing itself on me. To reclaim that choice, massive, 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 massive.
Yeah.
Gosh, I hope
That,
this resonates with people. I'm just kind of riffing off the cuff here, right?
well, we will throw it open soon, Michael, for everyone to, if they've questions, or we'll open the
Sure,
conversation
yeah.
to it.
Yeah,
I'm sitting here and I'm listening to the stunning parallels, because I had the same situation with my mother.
right.
And she was elderly and we began to mind her, and as a family we began to, and Thursday night was my night, and like I remember sitting inside one night and I was going, what the fuck am I doing here with this woman, because I was constantly angry with this woman, and I couldn't be left alone inside in the room with the woman for more than 20 minutes, and a row would start.
Right.
She wouldn't be starting it, I would be starting it.
Ah, yes.
you,
Good
you know,
catch.
right? And I remember sitting inside one evening. She was, at this stage, she was in her late 80s and required a bit of care. And I remember looking over at her. And I was saying to myself, but I'm doing the best I can here. I'm here with my mother. The old story, I'll have no regrets, which is a complete red herring in the conversation.
Yeah.
Because the no regrets is actually loving unconditionally. Did I love unconditionally? Not what I did, but how I loved.
Yeah.
But as that
Nice.
moment arrived inside in my head, I looked at my mother and I went, oh, fuck. My mother's doing the best she can too.
Yeah.
And has always done the best she could. And it was just, the light came on, you
Yeah.
know? And I remember the gift that it gave me was I held her hand for the last 7 months of her life every evening as she slept. I'd go with her, took her into the nursing home and sit with her for a couple of hours every night. And from somebody who couldn't be with her. To me, that's what I mean about it being a practical understanding. The impact
Yeah.
of seeing something deeper has this lovely translation into our lives.
Yeah, 100%, Billy. And sorry if I may, just you
Please.
brought up mothers. So my mother is 88. She still lives on her own. She
Lovely one.
is getting older, right?
Yeah.
She's getting older. I I mean, I'm making up a story here right now, obviously, but I'm not sure that I make this move with an 88-year-old mother. So if I go back pre-2015 and I put myself having an 88-year-old mother, I don't know that I'm able to make this move.
Mm,
We had so many conversations about it. There was so much sadness expressed from both of us about, I mean, I love my mom. We get along great. My dad passed away 6 or 7 years ago now. And so I've sort of stepped in and, been there for her the most. But I think, I think what made it possible for me to make this move with a fundamentally clear conscience was the awareness that, well, your sadness is your creation. That's not totally accurate, but the meaning you make of that sadness is your creation, my mom's creation and my creation. So
mm,
there was a freedom in knowing that regardless of our distance, each one of us was still creating our experience of it on our own. So there was something about being able to trust my mother to make her own experience of this rather than worrying about the type of me worrying about the type of experience she was going to have. So when she said, "Yeah, go, I get it," I believed her and I trusted her,
yeah.
So the again, there's something quite remarkable about knowing that everyone is always making it up for themselves.
Yeah.
And to be clear, because I'm not a jerk, if she was 92, I probably wouldn't have left. Right.
Let's just back up a small bit.
Yeah.
So
Um,
what I do want to bring this around to, there are a couple of things that I had highlighted at the start of this. And one is you spoke to it about the fact you took a deep dive into Sid's work.
yes.
And I'm often quoted in saying that you have the most extensive extensive collection of Sid's recordings, and you have a real in-depth understanding of his. You listen to him and take his word, we'll say, from his recordings. Um, I still think to this day the recording that probably had the most impact to me was Beyond Psychology.
Yeah.
Recording that really had a huge impact to me for how I heard it, we'll say, or whatever. But if there was a recording, a nudge that you'd like somebody to listen to, that would
Which,
maybe expresses what you feel Sid was saying.
oh wow,
There's a tickler now for you.
so Beyond Psychology is definitely one of them. It would be top five. So I'm a fan of his early ones.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in my collection, two of the earliest ones, the ones I enjoy the most, have no title. And don't ask me to quote from them. I am not Dominic. Um, there's there are two recordings called "It's So Simple." Those were very impactful for me. The Gosh, there really are so many, and I do have a challenging time with my memory and titles. Um, yeah, it's so simple. The main island, there's the main island. It's two recordings done on Salt Spring. So there's a Salt Spring weekend, which is exceptional. The main island recordings are exceptional. These are early.
Mm.
Um, what's that black book he's got called? The black one, the small one. It's basically written as the Tao Te Ching is kind of written. Help me out.
There's
I don't have it handy to pull
missing
it.
link. The
It's not one of the story ones. It's just with Declan. What's that one called? Someone help me. Help us out here.
oh, do you know?
The missing link?
That's the one. Thank you. Awesome. So there is a recording audio. Yeah, gee, that's bad, eh? Can't remember Michael Neal's book, can't remember Sid's book on here talking about it. Check out, if you don't have the collection that I have, reach out to me. I'll get it to you. It's not like I'm the only one who has it. I got it from somewhere else and I've curated it a little bit bigger. Yeah, please reach out. But the missing link is actually an audio as well. And it's not an audio of the book. So, you know, the missing link is exceptional. Main Island, Salt Spring Island. Gosh, if I had my list in front of me, it'd be so much easier to pick them out, but I don't. But you know, it's so simple, and the missing link would be really good for me. Are always really seem to be ones I revisit somewhat regularly when I kind of scroll through and do that and go, this one, it
Yeah.
kind of keeps coming up there. So yeah, yeah. Oh, the other one that I really like, and this might be part of, I'm not sure if this is part of the Long Beach Lectures, is The Best of Both Worlds.
No,
The Best of Both Worlds is a top 5 for sure. And I think that's in part where my idea comes from, or my belief that although Sid was pointing beyond, he was also talking about really bringing a harmony to our human aspect and our spiritual aspect. I think in a lot of ways, Sid was very much a pragmatist, and I don't think he gets enough credit for that part. But that's an opinion, very, very much an opinion that I can't really base
very
on
much.
any,
I feel very much the same as that.
you know.
From people that I've spoken to that knew Sid well, spoke about him being very grounded and very practical and very pragmatic.
Yeah, I really appreciated the fact that what I heard is that when he wasn't talking about the principles, he wasn't talking about the principles. He was just living an ordinary life. And I think very often when we, at least I'll speak from my experience, when we fall into this kind of stuff, we make it everything, we make it all there is. And in that making it all there is, again, I think it closes us off to seeing how it ripples outward and closes us a little bit from seeing the more that it is. Right. So I really appreciate Sid's, you know, well, if I'm not talking about the principles, I'm not talking about the principles. It was not his MO. It wasn't what he did all of the time, you know.
Michael,
So,
you wrote something recently, and I know it's part of this lovely course that you're running, but
oh.
you wrote the distinction between joy and happiness.
Yeah.
And I really genuinely loved it. I loved the distinction. I loved how you bookended both of those. And it's happiness is a word, and joy are words and feelings and emotions that appear across the principles as a feeling that people have when stuff starts to shift for them. But I love how you see them. I love the distinction that shows up for both of them. Would you talk to that? You know what I mean? Would you share that? You know that because I really genuinely went, that is a wonderful distinction between both of them.
Yeah, I wish I could take sole credit for that distinction, Billy, but I can't. It's a Buddhist distinction, actually.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it
well,
comes from, yeah, it comes from, I don't know if you can see this book, No Mud, No Lotus,
okay.
by
Oh
this
yeah.
guy. So I wish I could claim it as my own. I hope that I articulated it in my own words.
Beautiful.
But the distinction is that if you, I mean, I'll tell the story the way that well, I won't tell it the way they do, but imagine yourself in a desert, you're walking along, you're out of water, it's hot out, and you're wondering what's going to be next. Off in the distance, you see an oasis. That fills you with joy. So joy carries with it a sense of what is to come. There is an excitement around joy. You get to the oasis and there's shade and there's water and you cup the water and you drink. That is happiness. So there's something about joy being the way that I articulated it, the way that I see it is joy carries with it an anticipation of something to come, whereas happiness is the coming true of that thing that's been anticipated. I drink the water. Oh, there's the, it's an oasis.
Yes.
Oh, now I'm drinking the water. So to me, there's a distinction, and I haven't thought about it much since, but that distinction between the anticipation of something good to come and that good thing coming is where I see the difference between joy and happiness. Happiness is the way that I articulated it was in it with an in breath and an out breath. That's exciting. That is now how I describe happiness. So the exhilaration that one feels when one's excited is joy. The exhalation, the realizing of whatever that thing is that made us excited, that's happiness. That's how
I
I've
love
distinguished them
that.
for me.
It's such a, when I was reading it, I had, I went, oh, I feel that. I got the
Yeah,
sense of that. And I thought, what a wonderful distinction. What a wonderful way to describe both, because there is there's such a buzz off of joy when things are
yeah,
joyful. They're energetic. They're fizzing with, like you say, anticipation,
yeah,
and then there's a happiness. There's a settled into it type of the receipts of it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Oh,
That's
and I
no,
thought that what a glorious way to distinguish both, because happiness is that kind of a feeling. To me, is a kind of, oh, I'm happy now. Even in our language, we say, I'm happy now.
yeah, yeah. It's like since I read that, I wish, like I said, I wish I could claim it as my own. But
Well,
but there's something when I was first exposed to this, and it was someone else who pointed me towards the book and had used this metaphor. Actually, in the program that I run, they brought it up. So I started reading. It's like, oh my goodness. And then, so what that led me to is actually an exploration of the distinction between emotions and feelings, which this may or may not fit the scope, but I think for me, it's been a very interesting experience to discern feelings and nuances of feelings and emotions and nuances of emotion. And I think, one of the things that Sid talked about is follow the feeling, right?
mhm.
And I think my understanding of what that means has deepened over time. So I used to think it meant you feel your thinking. And that may or may not be true. The way that I see it now is what I am actually feeling is my proximity to the all that I am in any given moment. So the way it seems to me, and again, I'm not saying this is true, I'm saying this feels right for me as an articulation, is that what I actually feel is where I am relative to home. And my thinking is what moves me around and away from home. So I'm not actually, again, I'm not, I know that I'm in dangerous ground in contradicting Sid, right? But I think what he was really pointing to is what you feel is your relative position to home. And it's your thinking that is a vehicle that moves you away from home. And then the recession of paying attention to that thinking brings you back.
Yeah, I love that.
So I've been struggling to articulate that. I don't think we feel our thinking. I think what we experience day in and day out is where we are relative to all that we are.
And the closer to the truth or the farther away from it, it changes the sensation of it, as it were.
Yeah. So all we can really do, it's not the right articulation, but the power that we have is to use our personal thinking. So thought becomes a thing once it becomes personal thinking. It's no longer thought, it's now a thing. we can use that thing, that personal mind, that personal thinking to either take us away from home, or we can see through the personal thinking, which instantly brings us back. So, and I think in that is there's nothing for us to do, because when we're not paying attention to our personal thinking and allowing it to drag us away from home, we are home. Right? So there's nothing to do but to recognize when we're caught up in our personal thinking. And to come back to making this practical, recognizing our personal thinking and when we're caught in it is like a lifesaver. That's like the biggest life raft or life ring, or, you know, the Navy coming to save you, like to be able to catch oneself in one's thinking and to realize again, oh gosh, I'm doing it to myself, and then have the ability to let go of that. So I mentioned being able to discern distinctions in feelings. I think that's what Sid was pointing to when he says, follow the feeling, and you can follow the feeling back home. When we get clear and can discern one feeling from another feeling, understanding how we're creating it in our personal thinking by our attention, we can use that as a roadmap to come back home. Ah, this doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
No, this doesn't feel good. It's almost like, and we're all kind of, it looks like we're all old enough, you know, a divining rod, you know, like a coat hanger. It's kind of like that. So we can use our ability to feel as a map to bring us back to center. This doesn't feel good. This feels a little better. Oh, this doesn't feel good. This feels a little better. And over time, we can sort of hone in our ability to follow the feeling and allow it to guide us back home. Does that, I hope that articulation lands, right?
Well,
Excuse me.
it goes back to that early part of our conversation where, you know, whereas about trying to hold on to a certain feeling.
Exactly.
That's literally, you know, that's the gift of actually letting the feeling go, letting that emotion go.
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
is the resonance of hearing something deeper when we allow ourselves to be that in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Love that, Michael.
It, it, yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah,
conscious.
of course. Sorry.
No. You know, and I'm
That was
conscious of,
so fast.
you know, I'm going to throw it open. I'm going to just
Yeah, yeah, please.
open up the screen to everyone here. I'm going to change the view at the gallery. And I'm going to invite people in. You know, anybody that has got a question or a comment or something to add, or well, I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear your input into it. You know, I know Declan. I know
Absolutely.
you know Michael and stuff. You know, a very welcome contribution from anybody with anybody, any questions or anything, or do we continue to roll on, you know, and waffle our way through to the end of it?
Yeah, feel free to call me on my BS, right? Because we're all just making it up anyway.
Yeah.
Question, Michael, if that's okay. Hiya, Billy. Quick question. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I
Right.
can hear you.
Yeah. So, Michael, you talked about the balance at one stage, the balance between your spiritual world and your human self or your human world. I'm kind of surmising now, but by the spiritual side of it, is that what you referred to as home a few minutes ago as well? Would you, or is there some other definition for your spiritual side that you?
Yeah, that's a good question, Greg. So the way that spiritual side resonates for me is that which is more than what I see in the mirror. I don't want to try to sidestep that, but I don't have an answer for you. I don't know what that is.
Mm. Yeah,
But I know that there is something more
yeah.
than
Is
this
that
going on.
okay? Okay. And you mentioned greater consciousness at one stage that we're all connected to. Would that help kind of come closer to your description of spiritual, or even just describe what you mean by greater consciousness that we're all connected to?
Yeah, it's that which precedes us, right? There was not me. And before there was me, there was not me, and that not me, that whatever it is, wherever it is that life comes from.
Yep.
That to me is the spiritual part. And that to me is the part that to pull a Heidegger, that's not something we're meant to understand.
Yeah. And we
Right?
can't prove it either. But we believe
Well,
in it, or we sense it.
I would say we sense it
Yeah.
is more resonant to me than we believe it.
Yep.
Right? Because belief is something that always has to be substantiated, whereas something that we sense to me feels like it's a little bit easier to go, yeah, I sense that there's more to me. I hope that sort of answers the question,
that's very
Greg.
honest. Yeah.
You know, I wish I could define it, but the truth is I don't know.
Yep.
So it's the way that I've articulated it recently is that everyone kind of understands that there's more to us than what we see in the mirror. Certainly anyone who's ever had a child or seen something die knows that there's more to it than what we see in the mirror. So to me, that is greater consciousness. To me, that is wisdom. To me, that is universal energy. To me, that is the spiritual part of us. So maybe I'm lumping too many things into one, but for now, that will have to suffice.
Yep. No, thank you.
Yeah. No, my
I love
pleasure,
that.
Greg. I hope that was
Michael.
worthwhile.
I suppose what I found very helpful, Greg, in this was just I didn't need to know. I did, what struck me was, was for a while as part of this whole delving in and digging out and finding out, just that one day just occurred to me, like, I don't know, and I'm not going to know in this life. I only need to know that at a sense somewhere inside there, the truth is that. And that in my humanness, I'm just not going to know it, but I know it enough to say, I don't need to know it. And, to me, it just released so much of the digging.
Yeah,
Just to allow it to be what it is the fact that divine, to me, Sid was very clear: divine thought, divine mind, divine consciousness. It's outside of a finite awareness. Thank you, Arthur.
Yeah, thanks, Arthur. Heidegger points to that with, I mean, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the whole being movement that's around now. Dasein in German. So from Heidegger, Dasein means to be. And his claim is that that's the only thing we can know with any certainty. I know I am. I don't know if you are, but I'm assuming that you know that you are. And so when I talked about the balance earlier, Greg, it's really about not making one more important than the other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it too. Yeah, I just wanted to check because
yeah, I appreciate that.
It causes confusion when people dig into it, as you said already yourself. But the more we give it structure, as in three principles, and one is this, and one is this, and one's the other. I asked the same question roughly to Michael Neal, and there is only one. He said it's just we use three as a metaphor to describe it, So
yeah,
so,
exactly.
but you're always going to get the questions, and you're always going to get people digging,
Totally.
figure it out. The more structure we create around it, it's complex at first before they simplify it, So.
Yeah, I think that's a really good articulation of that and a really good thing to recognize, Greg.
Sure.
Yeah. What else have we got? Any other thoughts or questions or concerns or observations? Or David, is that your hand going
Michael,
up? Or?
I'm going to throw something at you. It's not a question. It's not a love tonight. But you said a while ago, Michael Neal. You came. How way did you put it? You were stuck between Michael Neal and Jack Pransky, right? Well, all we can say to you is Michael Neal was the starter. Jack Pransky is the dessert. You're the main course.
All right.
Let that
Okay,
wash
I got
over
you.
you, whatever.
I got you now. I got you.
Okay.
That's really lovely, Dave.
I hope Michael Neal and Jack Pransky don't hear that. But anyway, you know where I'm coming from.
Well, That's very generous, David. Yeah, they're both exceptional people. I was just on a weekend in Toronto with Michael Neal as part of his it was the Spiritual Catalyst. I believe that was the segment that I did. And I've done some mentorship over the years with Jack in a few different flavors, and both of them have I mean, a robust understanding of this is an understatement, but a very unique way of expressing it. They're quite, I was going to say quite different in their expression, but quite unique in their own individual expressions. I have a lot of admiration for both of them at various times on my journey. They've been monumentally helpful, and Jack in particular. Do we have? Can I share a quick story about Jack?
Yeah.
So, and this might speak a little bit to a discernment of different feelings and emotions. It was 2017 maybe, and I still had my gym, and one of my members passed away. Like he was in the gym, and I took a picture of him with his arm around a couple of people, and then he went out to his truck, and then he died. And I was with him when he died, and I was just, it was an experience and a half, let's just say, and I was trying to, what I felt in that moment was the first time I felt a true understanding of the distinction between capital T, capital M, and capital C, and small t, small m, small c, right? So universal consciousness, I could, and I was talking to Jack about this, and I could feel love and joy and grief and sadness. And it had this very thick, textural, visceral feeling within me. I could also feel my concern about being sued, my concern about the family, my concern about the impact this would have on my business and other people. There was a very clear discernment in how these things felt. And I got to give props to Jack for helping me make a distinction there. And what he said was, thank God for Jeff, he gave you a real gift. So maybe more evidence that we can actually follow the feeling. I could see that the bullshit personal thinking that I was making up was bullshit personal thinking. And I could feel the truth behind the substance of what was valuable in that experience. So it's there for us to discern if we pay attention, I guess is where I'm getting at with that. Really props to Jack, though, again. He's the man.
Love that. It's a powerful distinction, though, Michael. That's the one, and it also goes to show one of the things that I feel kind of crept into this conversation was things need to be still to know wisdom and all of this. But I keep pointing out it's got nothing to do with the external stillness; it's to do with the internal stillness. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah,
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
That it's even in the midst of turmoil, it's not the external stillness that's important. It's the ability to hear something.
Yeah.
That stillness that's available to us. I mean, to be truthfully honest, the times that it was the clearest to me was under a bus, and it was when I was in hospital dying 15 months ago.
Yeah.
Years ago. And the logic is that it should be there. If we were to look at it from a rational mind, but not from logic, but from a rational mind, it would make more sense. I should be freaking out, but I wasn't. It was completely the other way.
Yeah.
And I think that is such, a powerful distinction, that to recognize that it's not the external stillness that's important, it's the internal stillness. It's just that moment of being still enough to hear it.
Yeah. And as Sid would say, wisdom is only found in a good feeling, right? So create the ability within oneself, use our human faculties to be able to point us towards cultivating a good feeling. I mean, we do have some measure of participation in this whole thing too, right? So use our faculties to cultivate a good feeling. Once we cultivate that good feeling, goodness pours in.
Yeah.
then we can, hands on the wheel, hands off the wheel, hands off, we can play in this world. We can play in
Yeah.
both, I guess, is really what
Yeah.
it's all about for me. Anyway, I know we're up against time now, Billy.
Before I give you the final word, I want to just to
Yeah.
bring something else to this, Michael, that you
Please.
alluded to a while ago. And that terrible was in my head just to say it. I actually forgot it just
It's
as I
not
did.
just
No,
me.
actually,
That's
no,
awesome.
you know
Thanks,
what it is?
Billy.
There you go. You know that Sid found his way to speak it.
Yeah.
We spoke about Michael Neal finding his way to speak it.
Yeah.
Jack Pransky knows his way to speak it. Billy knows his way to speak it. Declan, Michael, David, everybody here knows their way to speak it.
Yeah.
And for a while, it's good to be in the language and in the conversation of the principles to get to what's been pointed. But the real sauce is when we learn to speak it, was we live into it for ourselves. And not to worry about, am I saying this the way it's supposed to be said or whatever. And I would encourage everybody that's here, that's listening to it, to speak it as you know it.
Yeah.
To speak it as you know it, because each of us are that unique expression of the one thing. So Sid spoke it the way Sid spoke it. And when Sid started speaking it first, that old Presbyterian was in him, the Christ consciousness, and it evolved into principles and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he found his way.
Yeah.
And and as I'm here, and as you brought up the distinction, I would encourage everyone just to speak it the way you know it to be true.
Yeah, there's sorry, Billy, my apologies. Carry on.
No, I thought it was a wonderful thing, and I just thought, you know what, just to cap that, that it's the truth is spoken through us, to our unique understanding of it. It doesn't make it not true. It just makes it heard and spoken differently, but the truth remains the same.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's no right or wrong way of articulating this. In fact, anyone who claims to have the right way of articulating this, I would start to suspect a little bit, there's no ownership of articulating the truth. I mean, we could probably converse around whether there is such a thing and what that might be, but
that's another conversation, because the dog is going to be chewing your shin bone in a minute, you know what I mean? Or at the very least peeing on it. No, Michael,
Billy, sorry, can I throw one thing in? Just
sure, absolutely. Yeah.
So Michael just reminded me, I was coming back on a plane last night from Spain, and I happened to have downloaded a few pieces on Netflix, just to watch. But one of the things I downloaded was, I think it's Our Universe or Their Universe. I'm not certain which one, but if you look it up, it's on Netflix. There's 6 different parts to the series, but it's narrated by Morgan Freeman. It's actually brilliant in terms of exactly what you were talking about, Michael, the link between life, if you know what I mean, and how it's so well done. So just highly recommend it to all of you. If you have time, have a look at it, and it's fantastic in terms of the interconnectedness.
We get the name up on the WhatsApp group.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Our Universe by Morgan Freeman, I think it is. I know the series.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, in fairness, he is the voice of God.
Well played, sir. Well played. Yeah.
Yeah, he is the voice of God. Michael, before I let you have the last word on all of this, Michael, it just, like, I know it's not a punt for business, but if anybody wants to find you or get to know you, and and about that wonderful Joyful Living course that you run, that 6-week program, please, by all means, speak to it, because it would be I'm sure there's a lot of, even those that are not available to the call tonight, would be interested in finding where you're at.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. So, we're coaches. So yeah, the way to find me is at insightbasedcoaching.com, just how it sounds, insightbasedcoaching, all one word.com. All of my contact info is there. The only thing that's missing from the website is my 3P sort of understanding. It touches on that. I do offer a program called the Joyful Life Project, which is an 8-week program, 6 explorations around acknowledging who we are, appreciating our attention, asking, allowing, and then taking action. I present it as a program that is founded in a deeper understanding of who and what we are, and enables us a very practical way of applying it. So finding the superpower of those words that I mentioned. And that's also through my website. I've got a, you can find me on Facebook. I'll keep this short. My last word to all of us in this conversation is be yourselves and honor yourselves and acknowledge who and what you are, and everything else will take care of itself from there. And if someone starts to tell you that they know something, skeptical. Unless it's Sid,
Well, someone's
So,
got to pick him up, so or else the
yeah.
drugs are. Michael, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
It's
Thanks so
been
much for the invite,
a
Billy.
fascinating conversation with you.
I appreciate it.
I love your articulation. I love the wisdom, and I can only speak for myself, but for the joy I've had in this conversation with you, Michael, to listen to you, to your clarity and your understanding. The only thing I can speak on behalf is everybody is a hearty thank you for coming, Michael. A hearty
Thank you so much for having me.
And it's been
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a real
you.
pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity to sort of chat at all of you and let you share some of this. I much appreciate it. Much love to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael, and God bless.
Cheers.
All right. God bless everyone.